You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Number 7, Shami finishes things off with a terrific performance, 7 for 57. New Zealand bowled out for 327, and India are into the final of the World Cup 2023.
Yes, that was how it played out in the early hours of Thursday morning. The Black Caps Cricket World Cup campaign coming to an end in the semi-finals at the hands of the hosts, India. That total they put up, 397, just too much for the Black Caps to reel in. You can't deny that India deserve their place in the finals. But what about the Black Caps? Where do we go to from here? The coach of the Black Caps is Gary Stead. He joins us now on the program. Gary, thanks so much for your time with us here on News Talk ZB this afternoon.
No problems, Elliott.
A couple of days removed, Gary, from that semi-final defeat. How do you assess the way that the Black Caps went out of that tournament?
Look, I mean, it's always disappointing, I think, when you get to a world tournament. You want to go all the way and you want to put the best teams under pressure. I think the good thing was that our match against India, we did manage to do that. And although it says 70 runs at the end of the day, I think when Kane and Darryl were going as they were, I think India were under a lot of pressure then, and we just needed to try and maintain that for a bit longer. But unfortunately, the 400 was just a little bit too far out of reach.
Gary, do you look back at that campaign and think maybe bowling was perhaps the Achilles heel of the tournament, especially when it comes to maybe the pace bowlers and not getting the swing or success that you usually do up front?
No, I don't think so. I think there's been some very, very high scores across all the teams over there. And I think when you get in conditions where the ball perhaps doesn't swing too much and in some cases doesn't spin a lot either, then you're always going to get high-scoring games. So, yeah, I mean, you always look for improvements and want to make those gains. But, yeah, I thought we batted well through the tournament. Yeah, if we'd restricted teams maybe 20 runs more, we might have won a game or two different. But you can always look back in hindsight. But as I said, they were conditions that were pretty flat for bowlers, but also could change at different times under lights as well. So you sort of had to adjust quickly to the changing circumstances.
Let's talk this pitch issue that came out in the hours before the game on Wednesday. Were you frustrated by the pitch, the change, the issues that were going on around that, and from the one that was supposed to be used, pitch 7, to where we got to with pitch 6?
Not really. The pitch that we saw when we turned up 2 days out did not change. It was the same pitch that they told us we were playing on, so we just prepared accordingly.
Gary, as you well know, Russian Ravindra, his name's been put up in lights throughout the entire tournament. I saw you interviewed the other day on Sky where you said perhaps it had taken you guys a bit by surprise as well, just how he had played. How important has he been throughout this tournament for New Zealand?
Well, he's been one of the talking points of the tournament here, so I think that says enough in itself to show how he's put his name up in lights and done amazingly well. So we're very, very proud of the way he's played. I think it's a real pat on the back for the development programs below the Black Caps as well, that he's come in and he's performed and getting such high praise from some very, very good players around the world. So yeah, we're delighted for Rachin and long may that continue.
Well, now you've got him to that standard. How do you keep him continuing on, I guess, with the home tours coming up, Bangladesh shortly as well, and really make him become one of the top players in international cricket?
Well, you have to just, keep him grounded for a start. One of the things I do think we have to be careful was his burnout with him. He's basically been on the road since August the 10th when we left. He's one of the only players that hasn't had a break throughout, so we're certainly conscious of that. That's always the danger, I think, when a young player bursts onto the scene, is people want to see them every game, but we just have to, I guess, manage the expectations around that as well.
Gary, I guess fielding was a slight issue for the team throughout the tournament. If you look back the last 15 years or so, it's been a real area of strength for the Black Caps. Would you agree that fielding perhaps lacked a wee bit for your team throughout the tournament? There were some uncharacteristic mistakes.
Yeah, I think we made some mistakes through the tournament. I think a lot of teams did as well, and I think you can put that down to the length of tournament, the scheduling, the way that it's sort of a lot of games have been crammed into the last 3 or 4 years, and it becomes hectic and it becomes tiring after a while. The lights are a little bit different in India as well. Some are a little bit lower, so there's a few reasons why it might be the case, but we certainly weren't the only team to drop catches. No one means to do that, and we certainly still work hard, very, very hard on it. So sometimes those errors do just occur.
We touched on the bowling before, Gary, but how much did you miss Matt Henry in the back half of the tournament once he was ruled out through injury?
Yeah, I think Matt Henry's a big loss. He's been in the top 10 bowlers in the world cricket, in ODI cricket, for the last 3 or 4 years, and you don't get there through just having the odd good performance. You do it through consistently being good, and so we really missed, I think, that consistency in the way that he has provided that I guess firepower at the top of the order for our team and leading into the tournament anyway.
Kane was asked about this post-game, and I'm sure as a coach you don't want to talk about generations closing and terms like that, but do you think maybe we've seen the last of Trent Boult on the biggest stage of one-day cricket, perhaps even maybe Kane himself in terms of a 50-over World Cup? Is that the last we'll see of those guys?
Well, I mean, there is that chance, of course. I mean, they're getting to the ends of their careers, and it's been a very quickly changing, I think, landscape of the global cricket game as well. So I don't know what it's going to look like in 2 years' time, and the World Cup's 4 years away. So there is that possibility that they may have played their World Cup, but also age isn't like, for me, a defining factor at all. If they're good enough and they're the best players, then yes, of course, we'd still look at selecting them.
Big picture, Gary, do you look back at this campaign as a success? You finished fourth, obviously. You're chasing a third straight final, but in some ways you weren't expected to get that far by pundits who didn't expect you'd make the final four. You did it once again. You proved them wrong to an extent. So do you look back at this campaign as a success?
Yeah, you always want to go further. I think if we'd beaten India in India, then I think no doubt we would have deserved that final spot. I don't think, no one's done it yet in this tournament. And as you said, there weren't too many pundits picking New Zealand at the start of the tournament to get this far. So when you consider teams such as England and Pakistan who didn't make the semi-finals, then I think we can still look with a fair amount of, I guess, positivity around what happened at this tournament.
Black Caps coach Gary Stead joining us on Weekend Sport on News Talk ZB. Gary, how would you classify 50-over cricket and its position in the international calendar at the moment? It's sort of been shoved out of the picture in the international game for a few years now, especially in the post-COVID cycle, a huge diet of 2020, not so much one-day international cricket. So where do you think 50-over cricket is at the moment, and how important is it still to the world cricket game?
My opinion is that it's very important in world cricket still. The danger I see, not so much for the bigger nations, but perhaps some of the associate nations, is if you don't play any ODI cricket in between World Cup years, then the longest version of cricket they'll play is T20 cricket. And I think that's a real danger to them and a danger to what that might look like in the cricket landscape in the future. So I think it's still got a big part to play.
Couple of final questions if I can, Gary. Obviously you're heading home, but it never really stops, doesn't it? The Bangladesh Test Series, I think, is about 10 days away. Luke Ronke leading the team for that. How do you keep, and I know you won't be there on the ground, but how do you keep the players that are staying around in the subcontinent mentally fresh after they've just come off a World Cup and now heading into a Test Series, which is the start of the World Test Championship?
Yeah, it's tough. We've been through this in the past, and we have noticed at times that players can, after tournaments like this, I guess, just find it hard to get themselves back up again. So I think the next week or so will be about getting that recharging and refreshing of them mentally more than anything. So I don't envisage there'll be a whole lot of practicing going on, but there will be that still needing to be ready for Bangladesh in the test series that have changed the format. So that's the balance that we always, I guess, try and strike, especially after world events.
And Gary, you're coming home and preparing for the home summer, which starts a month today. There's the test series against South Africa and Australia at the back end of the summer. So how much of a focus do you put on those two test series in February, March versus the front end where we've got Bangladesh and Pakistan and limited over stuff around Christmas?
Bangladesh and Pakistan still will provide a pretty important series for us when you look at the build up towards the T20 World Cup later in the middle of next year as well. So I think they are still a very important series for us. The Test series is obviously important. There's real relevance around that with the World Test Championship now. So we want to play well there against every series we go into. So we have Bangladesh first that we've got to encounter, and then we will get into South Africa and Australia later in the summer. But certainly a big home summer for the fans in New Zealand.
Looking forward to it very much, Gary, having the Black Caps back on home soil. Thanks so much for your time. Safe travels home to New Zealand. Appreciate your time with us here on News Talk ZB this afternoon.
Thanks, Elliott. Cheers.
Thank you, Gary. Gary Stead joining us on News Talk ZB.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.